Hello and welcome to the final tutorial in the 10-part xAPI and Articulate Storyline tutorial series. Today we're looking at how you can create an xAPI-enabled leaderboard in Articulate Storyline. So this is the culminating tutorial. It's where we're going to use everything we've learned so far to actually build a leaderboard. And we're going to use quiz score today, but you can build leaderboards based off of duration or fewest number of attempts, or anything else you might want to build a leaderboard based off of using the skills in this tutorial. So if you have not already completed the previous 9 tutorials, then you're likely going to be a bit lost in this one. So I do recommend viewing those ones first. But let's go ahead and dive in. So there are a few things you will want open here. I'm going to go ahead and show you. So you're going to want to open up the storyline file that we've been working on throughout all of these tutorials. You will want to open the query.js file and the xAPI statement.js file. So the xAPI statement.js, this is the one where we're sending all of our statements, and query.js is where we practiced querying the learning record store. So with those files open, we're going to go ahead and start in Articulate Storyline. So we're going to create a really basic leaderboard, okay? And I'll show you, I have this tutorial open here. This is devlinpeck.com/tutorials/create-xapi-leaderboard. So we will be copying some code from here. It shows us how to do it step by step. And here's an example of the leaderboard we're going to create. But it's actually going to have the scores and everything on it like you see here. So it looks like, so we're going to create a 2x6. Let's create a new slide right here after our question. So I'm going to go new slide, basic layouts, and blink. So you see here we have question 1, question 2. They look almost exactly the same. And then I have this blank slide right here. So I'm going to insert a table. It's going to be 2x6. And this is our leaderboard. So we want to have the user's name on one side and their score on the next side. Okay, and maybe we want everything in here to be centered. Okay, good. So obviously we can't just populate the names and the scores with whatever we want, because it's going to depend on who scored the highest on this quiz. And again, this is a really simple example. We only have 2 questions. But the way we're going to do that is we're going to use variables, storyline variables. And when we write some code that goes ahead and queries the learning record store and sorts the scores by highest to lowest, we're going to use that data to set these variables. So I'm going to open up the variable manager over here on the right. I'm going to select Manage Project Variables. And we're going to create some variables called first user. And I'm just going to go down the list. I'm going to do first user, second user, third user, all the way through 5th. And same thing with the score, first, second, third, fourth, and 5th score. So let's go ahead and do that. First user, second user, third user. And these are all going to be text variables. And now we're going to do the same for the scores. First score, second score, third score, fourth score, and 5th score. So go ahead and pause this video if you need to. We want to make sure we add first, second, third, fourth, 5th user and score. And these are going to be our placeholders. So to go ahead and display these placeholders, we can go to the Insert tab. Okay, so notice I clicked this first cell where we want the first place user's name to show up. We can go to the Insert tab and then select Reference and then double click first user. Or we can just type in those percentage signs ourselves. Because that's how Storyline knows that it's a variable reference. It's enclosed by percentage signs. So you see what I'm doing here. This is all we needed to do. And then we'll do the same thing with the scores. First score. So again, all we're doing is we're creating these variables which serve as placeholders, because once we execute the JavaScript that queries the learning record store, we're going to change these variables using some JavaScript. So again, I'll make sure it's all centered. And we are in good shape. It doesn't look like anything special. We're using the default everything basically, but we do have the framework for our leaderboard. So once you're done with that, let's go ahead and build a function now that's going to populate this leaderboard. So I'm just going to start a new function right here. We're going to call it function populate leaderboard. It doesn't take any parameters, and then we need to go ahead and open and close those curly brackets so that we can put our function inside of this. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to set this parameters variable. Oh, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and just copy this right here where it says const parameters. That's good. And now you notice last week we were just playing around with this. We showed that we can query the learning record store by the user, by the verb, and by the activity. For now, we're just going to take this activity one because we want to get all of the xAPI statements where someone passed or failed this quiz. So you can see the JavaScript here. We're saying that the user passed quiz 1 with this object ID every time they reach this passed screen. And same thing for failed. Every time the user fails, we use the send failed statement, and we're using the quiz 1 object ID. So since these are the only times we're using the quiz 1 object ID, we know that all of the xAPI statements will be that the user either passed or failed. And because of how we set up this file, here let's just look at one of these send passed statements. We have this result object which will have the user's score. Okay? So if you remember from the collect quiz score information tutorial, we're going to know whether the user got a 0%, a 50%, or 100% by the property in this scaled score location. And I'm going to go ahead and sign into my learning record store so that we can see what kind of data we're going to be pulling from. All right, so I signed into my YouTube learning record store, and now we can go to xAPI data and statements over here on the left, and it will show us our stream of xAPI statements. So just to show you this example, here's our most recent statement we received. We failed quiz 1, and if we scroll down, we can see this scaled score is 0.5. So that's the number we're going to be using to rank these scores on this leaderboard. So let's go back to our query.js file. We know that now once we execute this line of code right here, we're creating this query data variable, and we're setting it equal to all of the statements that match these parameters. And in this case, all of the statements where the object ID matches this quiz 1 object ID right here. So this is good. We could actually execute this code and see what we get back so that you know where we're going with this. So let's open up an old project that uses the xAPI wrapper because that's what we need to execute these commands. And now I'm going to go in the console. You don't need to follow along with this part. This is just for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to copy this code that we just created inside of this function, and I will execute it. So now when we type in query data, we can see that we have an array of 4 statements. And I think we looked at this in the last video. So some of these statements are passes, some of these statements are fails. So this is good. We can do query data dot statements to directly return that array, because you notice it had this object here called statements. So we access that directly, and now we see these 4 xAPI statements where someone passed or failed the quiz. And also, if you remember from last week, we can access these. So we can say, okay, give me the first xAPI statement dot result dot score dot scaled, and that's how we can access that property. We just work our way down the tree. So we did, this 0 positioned statement dot result dot score dot scaled, and it gives us that value right there. So that is how we will be sorting these things. So we need to add a bit more to this. So we can create a new variable called statements. So I'm going to create a variable called statements equal to query data dot statements. And that will give me that array of these 4 statements that you see right here. Okay? So I'm going to pull up this tutorial that I have so we can look at the code, because we're going to want to copy a little bit of it. So I'm going to copy this function right here. It's a sorting function, okay? So we're going to say statements.sort, and this function is made available by JavaScript, so it's a method. You can look up the array sort method if you want to learn more about this, but basically what it's doing is it's saying take all of those 4 statements that we just received and sort them from the highest scaled score to the lowest scaled score, okay? So this is good. Once we execute all of this code now, when we call statements, it's going to be in order from the highest score to the lowest score. So I can just demo that really quick so you can see where we're going with this. So I'm going to refresh this. I'm going to execute this new code that we wrote. And now you see we get this array back, and I can access it just by typing in statements since we created that variable. And I bet if we type in statements.0.result.score.scaled, you'll see it's 1, which is equivalent to 100% because it's on a, it's a decimal between 0 and 1. So that's perfect. And if we do the last statement in the array, it looks like we have a 0%. So it's perfect. It ordered this array exactly how we wanted it to be ordered. That function was really useful for us. So that's good. So when we access the first statement, we have the entire statement, you'll see. So, it ordered these 4 statements, but the full thing is still here. We have the person's name, we still have the object, we have all of the score information that we need. You see, we have the duration, we have everything. All it did is it took those statements and ordered the whole statement in order of which one has the highest scaled score. So that's good news. We're almost there. All we need to do is we need to set those storyline variables. Well, we need to do a couple. Let's start with that. So let's say now we want to do player.setVar because, or we'll get the player. So of course const player equals player.getVar. So that's how we access the storyline player. And now we want to set the variable called first user, and we want to set it with statements 0.actor.name. Is that right? Let's see here. So we want to go to this. We want to get this first xAPI statement. We want to take the actor object, and then we want to take the name property. So this person in first place, their name is Devlin Duration. It's just the name I put in when we were going through that tutorial. So that's how we access it. The same way we use this code to access the scaled property, we use this dot notation to work our way down the xAPI statement like a tree. So we want the name that shows up here in this first user spot. And let's move this actually right after the results slide. That's good. So we want this first user to be the person's name who has this xAPI statement in first place. And you do that with this bit of code right here that we just wrote. So we'll do the same thing, player.setVar second user, and we will use the same bit of code, but now it's statements 1.actor.name. Okay, so you see, I'm just going to actually copy and paste this, and we can use the same approach all the way down for the first 5 users. Okay, so then instead of second user, it's going to be third user. And fourth user and fifth user. And make sure, remember the arrays are 0 indexed. So for the first user, the item in the array we're getting is in the 0 position. And the fifth user, that item is in the 4th position in the array. So if you've been paying attention, you've probably noticed, okay, well, we only have 4 xAPI statements where someone passed or failed this quiz. So when we go through it today, we will make sure, when we go through it today, we're going to generate a 5th one because we're going to hit this results screen before we get to this final screen right here. So we're almost done. Now we just need to do the same approach with the scores, okay? So we can do player.setVar and now first score, and we'll set that equal to statements 0.result.score.scaled. Because again, we want that same property where we have the scaled score. But if you remember, this is just a decimal. So this is going to be 0 if they answered no questions right, 0.5 if they answered one question right, and 1.0 if they answered both questions right. So what we can do is we can take this, we can multiply it by 100, and we can add a percentage sign after it. Okay? So that bit of code right there will make sure that instead of saying 1, it's going to say 100%. Instead of 0.5, it's going to say 50%. And instead of 0, it will just say 0%. Okay? So in the text-based tutorial, I show you how to do this with a quick with a for loop. This bit of code right here will go through and change that result.score.scaled property for you for each one of these. But I wanted to just show you, if you wanted to do it manually, you can still do it that way. So we're going to go ahead and go through and change it for the next, to make sure we have it populating for all 5 of the top scores. So first score, second score, third score, make sure we're changing the item it's pulling from that array. And if anything is confusing about this, please go ahead and ask in the comments, because if you understand how we're accessing these different properties on the array, you can use this approach for any kind of thing. You can go ahead and sort it by the duration. You might need to add a bit of code to take it back out of that ISO 8601 format. And then instead of accessing the result.score.scaled property, we would be accessing the duration property, result.duration. So there we have it. This code right here should go ahead and take the player and then set all these variables for us. Let's go ahead and test this code. So you notice, we wrapped all of this in a function. We need to make sure that we execute that function, because we don't want all of this code to just execute when someone loads the course, because then, the user's score will get sent after we query the learning record store. So we want to make sure that we execute that function on this page, the leaderboard page. So we're going to create a new trigger. We're going to say execute JavaScript. The JavaScript will be this function, populate leaderboard, and make sure you do the opening parenthesis and the closing parenthesis. And then we'll press OK. And we'll execute that code right when the timeline starts on the page. So when the user gets to this page, it goes ahead and populates that leaderboard. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this. We'll publish it right on the desktop. We'll call it create xAPI leaderboard. All right, so while that's publishing, notice we have this populate leaderboard function in the query.js file. Let's go ahead and move it into this xAPI statement.js file so that we only have to add one file to our published output. So here we go. I've just added it at the very bottom here after this convert to ISO function. We'll go ahead and save this. So now I have that xAPI statement file ready to go. Let's open up this new published output folder. We know we're going to need to link these script tags from the story.html file, so let's right-click that and open it with our code editor. Now it's just a matter of getting this xAPI wrapper file into the new published output. And now I need to get the xAPI statement.js file right here. I'm going to do file, save as, and we're going to save that into this new output folder. So now we just need to link them. I'm going to go ahead and open up, let's see, this is the most up-to-date one. I'm going to go ahead and open up a story.html file from one of the previous videos. I'll scroll to the bottom and I'll copy these script tags right here. And now I will paste them right above the closing body tag in the new story.html file. So you've seen me do this many times if you've been following along. Just paste those script tags right above this closing body tag. And now we're going to go ahead and test this. So we will open the story.html file. I'll open the console just to see if we have any issues being logged. And we'll say this is Devlin leaderboard. All right, we will submit this. Let's see, the answer is C. So let's try to answer them all correctly. It says the answer is A here. We'll do choice A. It says we passed. That's excellent news. Now, moment of truth. Our leaderboard did not load. Okay, I think I executed this. Let me see here. I think I used the wrong command to get the player, because you notice here in the console it says player is not defined. And if you look at this code, I was trying to say player equals player.getVar. Wow, I just wrote this completely wrong. This should be getPlayer. So I think my brain was a bit ahead of me when I was working on this. So let's go ahead and change this in our. So you might have noticed this when I was going through this, but yeah, I must have just been asleep at this point. Player equals getPlayer. If we scroll up and look at one of our other functions, we can see this. Yeah, right here. Const player equals getPlayer. So that's what this should be right here. I'm going to go ahead and save this file now, and we're going to reload this, and it should. Let's see if resuming works. Here we go. So I press resume. It brought us right back to this leaderboard page, and now it knows what, now this bit of code actually makes sense, and it lets us access all of these player.setVar methods. So forgive my brain fart there, but here we are. We can see the user's name, and again, they're all me because this is just my test learning record store for these YouTube videos. We see we scored 100% 3 times, 50% once, and a 0% once as well. Nice. Okay. So if you've been following along, then now you see how we can actually pull data from the learning record store and make use of it in a storyline course. That was just one example. You can also use the data you get back to, you could pull all of the data on the person's email address and say, oh, has this person failed this quiz before? If so, maybe we show them some additional resources this time. Or, oh, did they fail any of the last 5 quizzes? If they failed the third one, maybe we show another question from that third quiz in this assessment. So there's a lot of possibilities with this. If you have any questions about that, just go ahead and comment below. There is a longer crowdcast of this session that I did last week. So if you want to see that recording where we dive deeper, it's going to be on this YouTube channel very shortly. And thank you very much for following along with all 10 of these. I will have more tutorials and videos coming, so feel free to subscribe if you want to continue following along. I have some xAPI and Rise stuff in the works, some xAPI and video content, a lot of good stuff coming. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.